The year was 1938. The place, San Francisco. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. The price of a gallon of gas, 10 cents. A movie ticket, 25 cents. The Golden Gate Bridge was just 1 year old. And a young secretary named Lucille Johnson founded a local association of businesswomen which would grow to be international in scope and endure into the next 75 years. Who was Lucille Johnson? What was the inspiration for her achievement? Let's look back at her life and at the world that shaped her vision of the future. Henriette Lucille Johnson was born in Los Angeles County, California on October 25, 1907. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt was president. Horse-drawn carriages shared the roads with early automobiles. At the dawn of the 20th century, more women were working outside the home. Women were 1/3 of the nation's clerical workers and 86% of its teachers. Even so, in most of the United States, women could not hold property in their own name, and a woman's property became her husband's at marriage. Women were allowed to vote in only 4 states in the U.S. It was argued that, with their big sleeves, women would be able to hide numerous ballots and vote more than once. Lucille's childhood years were times of innovation and conflict. She was 8 years old when the first transcontinental telephone call was conducted from New York to San Francisco. 1 year earlier, Mary Phelps Jacob patented her invention, the brassiere, freeing women from corsets stiffened with whalebones. Lucille was 10 years old when the U.S. entered World War I. 1 million troops shipped out to fight in Europe until the war ended in 1919. In 1920, when Lucille was 13, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted women the right to vote. Lucille was a teenager in the 1920s, the era known as the Jazz Age and the Roaring Twenties. Women shortened their skirts and bobbed their hair, took to wearing makeup, smoking, and seeing men without a chaperone. By 1927, Henry Ford was producing the Model T car, and the first motion pictures with sound were premiered. Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly over the Atlantic Ocean in 1928. When Lucille was 22, the post-war prosperity of the 20s ended in the devastating stock market crash of 1929, beginning the worst depression in U.S. history. Recovery from the Great Depression would not begin in the U.S. until 1933, when Lucille was 26. By 1938, Lucille was living in San Francisco and working for the National Lead Company. One of their best-known products was Dutch Boy paint. Lucille's typing skill was exceptional. This newspaper photo announced her travel to New York for an international speed competition for typists. Her speed, 138 words per minute for 22 sustained minutes on a manual typewriter. National Lead was a member of the Executives Association, an organization of businessmen founded in San Francisco in 1916 for the purpose of exchanging business leads. Membership was by invitation, with the policy of 1 firm per business category. Lucille was inspired. She wrote letters to all the San Francisco members of the Executives Association to invite their secretaries to a meeting to discuss the formation of an organization of businesswomen for the purposes of networking, professional development, and community service. The response to Lucille's letters was overwhelming. 50 women attended the first meeting to plan the formation of the new organization. Officers were elected, and Lucille became president of Executives Secretaries. The new association arranged for meetings to be held twice each month. This photo from the second meeting of the new organization shows Lucille and 3 members of her board seated at the head table on the right side. Lucille is at the center right in the light color hat. Even at this early date, Lucille was planning the next step. Just 1 month later, Executive Secretaries was incorporated as a nonprofit corporation in California. Among the 10 principles under which the new organization was founded is this one: to improve ourselves, increase our efficiency, and enlarge our service, believing that she profits most who serves best. After incorporation, regular meetings and special events were scheduled. This newspaper photo announced a meeting with each member in costume to represent their firm. Lucille is pictured in white painter's togs and a hat with the Dutch Boy paint logo, along with Mary and Fury of the Drake Hotel in a page boy's uniform. The group made history at their Father's Day meeting in June when they became the first women admitted to the Pied Piper Room, a men's club at the Palace Hotel. The meeting was emceed by the only male member of Executive Secretaries, Honorary Member Eric Cullenward, Secretary to the Mayor of San Francisco. Among the firms on the roster of charter members were F.W. Woolworth Company, Children's Hospital, the San Francisco Chronicle, and Time Incorporated. Executive Secretaries was not yet 1 year old, but Lucille had a larger vision. By the fall of 1938, she was planning for expansion. In October, Lucille sent this letter to the secretary of each firm in Los Angeles with membership in the San Francisco chapter. At the top of the letter is the original logo of Executive Secretaries, stenciled lettering with a hand drawing of an inkwell and quill pen. The letter outlined the purpose and goals of the organization. A copy of the 10 principles was attached, along with an application form. There were no dues or fees. The only expenses were the cost of the dinners. The letter is signed H. Lucille Johnson. In the next few months, Miss Johnson's life would change, and so would her name. The end of 1938 was the beginning of a new life for Lucille when she married Ernest W. Perkins, a carpenter from Wales, Great Britain. Born in 1883, Ernest was nearly 25 years older than his 31-year-old bride. This is a recent photo of the newlyweds' first home on 35th Avenue, south of Golden Gate Park. The 1,400-square-foot home with 1 bath was built in 1926. The home was sold in 2011 for $650,000. After the start of the new year in 1939, it was back to the business of executive secretaries. In January, Lucille hosted a luncheon at her home for members of the incoming new board of directors in San Francisco. This newspaper photo shows Lucille in the floral dress pinning incoming President Marion Bell. Marion had served on Lucille's board as program director. Lucille would serve as advisor to Marion's new board. The chapter had found a new location for their meetings at a member firm, the Drake Hotel. The city newspaper featured this photo of Lucille seated with new President Marion Bell at a luncheon meeting at the Drake Hotel. Since October of the year before, Lucille had placed expansion plans on hold to focus on settling into married life while working full-time and continuing to mentor the San Francisco chapter. With a new board installed in San Francisco, she was ready to turn her attention back to the formation of a new chapter in Los Angeles. Lucille sent this second letter to Los Angeles firms to invite them to an introductory meeting on May 1st, at which time Lucille would explain in detail the operations of the association. The initial meeting was followed by a dinner meeting on May 18th, and the first member firm program was hosted on June 15th by the Los Angeles Times. In July, Lucille traveled to Los Angeles to install the first board of the new chapter at a dinner meeting at the Hotel Clark. Among the officers installed was Lucille's close friend, Ruth Mary Barnes of the P.C. Moran Real Estate Company. Ruth Mary would become LA's first treasurer. She would also serve 2 consecutive terms as chapter president in 1940 and 41. The 2 California chapters enjoyed a close relationship, with officers and members traveling frequently to attend the sister chapters' meetings. In 1940, for the first time, the new year would begin with 2 chapter board installations. In San Francisco, Marion Bell turned over the gavel to Mary Lou Bonnell at the Drake Hotel. Los Angeles installed their new board, with Ruth Mary Barnes as president, on January 18th at the Hotel Clark. Lucille missed the festivities, though she did send the chapter a gold president's pin, which would become the legacy pin for future presidents. She also sent her friend Ruth Mary the gift of a beautiful compact mirror. By 1940, Lucille and Ernest had left the house on 35th Avenue. The federal census of 1940 listed their address in this building on Willard Street in the Haight-Ashbury district in San Francisco. The census also recorded details of the couple's finances and backgrounds. Lucille was a high school graduate. Ernest had completed the 8th grade. Their monthly rent was $45. Lucille's income for the year was $1,680. Sadly, the Perkins marriage was not destined to be a long one. By 1941, Lucille had left the apartment on Willard Street to start a new life as an unmarried woman. To begin her new single life, Lucille chose an apartment in this elegant building on Washington Street, near downtown, between Pacific Heights and Nob Hill. From an apartment on a higher floor, she may have had a glorious view of San Francisco Bay. In January 1941, Lucille traveled to Los Angeles to install their new board members, including her friend Ruth Mary Barnes, beginning her 2nd term as president. The installation was a firm night hosted by the Los Angeles Times in the auditorium of the magnificent Times building. Lucille had a special surprise planned. The Los Angeles chapter newsletter reported, "Distinction was lent the occasion by H. Lucille Perkins, our founder, who paid unusual tribute to Ruth Mary Barnes by conferring on her the title of co-founder of Executive Secretaries in recognition of her activities as organizer of the Los Angeles branch." The chapter's affection for their founder was demonstrated when a caricature of Lucille was included in a group of playful drawings of incoming board members. Lucille is depicted inside the inkwell of the Executive Secretary's logo. The artist was the husband of the member from Remington Rand Typewriters. This photo from a dinner meeting in San Francisco shows Lucille in the center, with Marion Bell, the chapter's 2nd president, seated on her left. Lucille's accomplishments over the past few years were even more remarkable, considering that she was not in good health. She had conceived the idea for executive secretaries while recovering from an illness in 1938. In September of 1941, she called on her attorney to draft a document which would foreshadow the months ahead. Lucille drafted a last will and testament. On November 7th, 6 weeks after she drafted her will, Lucille was admitted to Children's Hospital. Children's Hospital opened in 1875 as the first hospital created by women for women. It was founded as a Pacific dispensary for women and children by 2 female physicians and 10 prominent San Francisco women. Lucille was admitted for a critical illness, acute rheumatic fever with inflammation of the heart, and blood clot formation throughout her body. She would remain at Children's Hospital for the next 4 months. Meanwhile, half a world away, cataclysmic events were unfolding in Europe and the Pacific that would plunge the United States and its allies into another world war. On December 7, 1941, 1 month after Lucille was hospitalized, Following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor Naval Base, the U.S. entered World War II, joining Canada and the other countries of the Allied powers. With the U.S. at war and citizens at home mobilized in support, Lucille spent Christmas and New Year's away from home and work and meetings of executive secretaries. The two chapters became active in the war effort, selling bonds, rationing commodities, and sending husbands, sons, and brothers off to fight on foreign shores. In January 1942, Lucille mailed a letter to the Los Angeles chapter to wish them well on their installation dinner. She noted her return address as Children's Hospital, San Francisco. In the early spring, there would be a change of scene. On March 14th, Lucille was discharged from the hospital and admitted on the same day to a convalescent home. The Ladies' Protection and Relief Society building was designed by California's first woman architect, Julia Morgan, in 1924. The building is still operated today as an assisted living facility for seniors. Lucille's condition remained critical despite the continuing care. On the afternoon of Monday, April 13th, at 3:30 p.m., the nursing home staff reported that she suffered a heart seizure. They summoned her physician, Dr. Charles Noble. When he arrived, he found her unresponsive. Dr. Noble pronounced her time of death at 6:30 p.m. The medical inquest found the cause of death to be a brain hemorrhage with heart disease from the rheumatic fever. Henriette Lucille Johnson Perkins was 34 years old. The Los Angeles chapter newsletter published a special tribute to Lucille by her friend Ruth Mary Barnes. Ruth Mary said, "Let this time be spent neither in sorrow or regret, but rather in wishing that her journey through her new life be happier and longer." Lucille's last will and testament declared that she was a single woman with no children or next of kin. She named 4 friends as beneficiaries of her estate, including her dearest friend, Ruth Mary Barnes. The will states her desire to be cremated and her ashes scattered over the Golden Gate Bridge. On April 16th, she was transported to Woodlawn Memorial Park and was cremated according to her wishes. There is no record that her ashes were scattered over the Golden Gate. In fact, the evidence leads to a different resting place. Woodlawn Memorial Park is located on the peninsula south of San Francisco in a setting of gentle hills. The San Francisco fog rolls in at dusk and dawn, according to the season. Records show that Lucille's ashes were interred in the urn garden of the cemetery. There was no marker installed on her resting place. At some point in the years that followed, a marker intended for a nearby site was placed in error on Lucille's place, perhaps due to the close proximity of the burial sites in the urn garden. And so she has rested, far from the Golden Gate, in an unmarked grave with another family's marker on the site. To commemorate EWI's 75th anniversary, arrangements were made to relocate the marker placed in error, and a new marker was commissioned for Lucille's site. The new bronze memorial is engraved with an etching of the Golden Gate Bridge and these words: H. Lucille Johnson Perkins, 1907 to 1942, EWI, Connections, Careers, Community, Founder, 1938. On the day the memorial was installed, 75 red roses were delivered to the site. At long last, 71 years after her passing, Lucille now rests where she longed to be, under the Golden Gate. Did Lucille have any idea of the potential for growth and longevity of the organization she founded? What would she say if she could see EWI today? In a letter written to the Los Angeles chapter in 1940, her words resonate. "The idea was mine, but the accomplishment is yours. Lucille's leadership became a legacy of inspiration to her successors to carry her vision into the future. The organization that she founded continues to develop and enrich its members, their firms, and their communities, from the first annual convention in 1948 through each decade beyond. And today, Lucille's successors are business leaders for a new century, dedicated to preserving and advancing the principles of connections, careers, and community first outlined when the organization was incorporated in 1938 by a young secretary in San Francisco. 75 years after Lucille's idea gave birth to what would become Executive Women International, EWI has reunited with its parent organization. In the fall of 2012, corporate president Karen Skirton followed a clue which led to the International Executives Association and confirmed that it is the parent of the San Francisco organization which inspired Lucille to found Executive Secretaries. The IEA newsletter proclaimed their joy at connecting with EWI with the headline, "We have a 75-year-old daughter." Plans are in motion to establish an alliance for the mutual benefit of the two organizations. And so, Lucille's legacy has come full circle into the present. Who was Lucille Johnson Perkins? Much of her life is lost to history. What we know of her, from her writing, her achievements, and the times that shaped her, is this. She was a member of the greatest generation who survived a Great Depression and 2 world wars with an unshakable dedication to service before self. She was the beneficiary of a new era of liberty and opportunity for women. She was a skilled professional, a generous friend, and a successful businesswoman of her time and ahead of her time. Henriette Lucille Johnson Perkins, founder, visionary, leader.